Uh, check, check. Yeah, you do know. Okay. All right. Shalom, y'all. Happy incoming Sabbath. Apologies. Something came up. Um, had to, had to move the class up to 7 instead of 8:15. So, for those of y'all that do see it, apologies. Or you'll watch it later, Lord's will. Tonight's topic, we're not going to be long. It's called the burden of the Lord. The burden of the Lord. Let's open up with Proverbs 27. Let's open up with Proverbs 27. All right, Proverbs 27 in verse 19. It says, "As in water, face answereth to, as in water, face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man." I don't remember when I first came across the scriptures quite some time ago, but it's very I don't know what word I'm looking for. The scripture is very insightful, I guess you'd say. It's kind of like not. It's the exact same thing as you read about in James 1 when it talks about understanding what you look like in the mirror, right? When a person understands themselves, the physical aspect of it, it's kind of helping you to understand everything that you see on your face. You see on a day-to-day basis, right? You can kind of pinpoint that. Or something, it's like a rare situation where something pops up, unless it happened overnight, that you don't recognize yourself or your face from a day-to-day aspect, right? You can kind of go down the bullet points of everything that you understand, the blemishes you see, you know what you look like, right? That being said, the same way you look at water and the reflection shows itself, yourself, you see a reflection in the water, face answer to face, right? It is what you see, it is what you are. The same way the heart or the mind of a man answer to the man, right? Because the mechanisms that make you who you are doesn't come from the outside, it doesn't come from validation looking for somebody else. It's how aligned you are with your creator, right? Because the creator's heart or the creator's mind is what you're supposed to have. That's what's supposed to possess and function your physical body. Because the spirit is everything, the physical is nothing at the end of the day. So, whatever a man's mind is, that's who he is, right? Not fleeting thoughts or different things like that, because that's just kind of the human experience, if you will, be it Gentile, Israelite, whatever. That's just how the human mind works, right, on a day to day basis. But who you are, how you think, majority of the time, and how those actions come about from the thought process is what makes you you. That's how we can nail down if you're wicked, if you're righteous, right? So it's a very insightful scripture to help a person understand the thought process of how a person's mind works and what about that thought process makes that person who they are. And most people don't understand this concept at all. They don't understand it, but it makes sense because there's a lot of confusion on the earth, right? Um, here's a good example. Jump back to Proverbs 20 in Proverbs 20 verse 5, right? It says, "Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water," right? This couldn't be more true. The mechanisms of a person's mind is like it's like deep water, right? But a man of understanding will draw it out. A man that has understanding, or a man that can comprehend and make sense of what he sees, make sense of the things that he's going through, make sense of how he reacts in his environment, that's a person that can draw things out, right? You're trying to get something out of the water, right? Remember the example of in John 4, when the woman of Samaria, Christ comes to her and says, "Give me something to drink." And the Samaritan woman says, the dialogue goes back and forth about, "Who are you as a Jew to ask me something like that as a Samaritan woman," right? And Christ says, "If you knew who you talked to or you spoke with, you'd be asking me for the water," right? Because it's living water. But she responds and she says, and this is kind of the point, she responds and she says, "You don't have anything to draw with because the well is deep," right? So a person that can comprehend and understand these things will be able to draw something out to get this water to make it useful, right? Water is not good in a distance, or you can't use it and you can't get to it. Or it's the same thing as salt water or something. You need to survive off of that. You might die or whatever because the water be contaminated, whatever. It's not usable to drink. A person's mind's like that. There's all kinds of different things running through a person's mind: evil thoughts, good thoughts, lust, all kinds of different things that's running through a person's mind. And a person that understands these concepts is a person that's going to be better off for it. Because most people don't. When you have conversations with people, people say what they think, and usually they're not. If a person can kind of push some pressure points, you can kind of realize that people are not as smart as they think they are. I think that's maybe the biggest fatal flaw in all of humans is that the pride is so high. Everybody thinks they're so intelligent. Everybody, until you start to add uh, some of these things I didn't even think. When somebody kind of asks you a question in a particular way, and it kind of blows your whole framework of how you view the world apart. This is kind of how how Christ did the Pharisees a lot. They would ask these questions and swear they had them boxed in, and he would just reply with a simple thing and just destroy them all. And this is what happens when you start to understand. You connect with that spirit of the Creator that He gave you. You start to operate in that same mindset, right? Things start to line up and start to make sense. A person needs to understand that's where the battle is. That's where the biggest battle is going to be from the time you understand. I wouldn't say you're born, but that is the gist of it. When you're brought through this portal into this world until the time that you return back to the dust, the battle is you against you. That's your mind, right? Some people saw the the image for the class, right? The burden of the Lord. It's a person, is a man carrying himself. This is kind of the thought process when you're working in this system and the thing that you've come to know as the world, right? And people need to understand, just like you see a reflection in that water and you can pinpoint which that's me, right? A person needs to figure themselves out, and you better do it quick because the time's running out. But this is kind of always a process of coming into your own and being introduced to the laws and understanding your nature and understanding who you are and what nation you belong to, understanding what thought process and what spirit you're supposed to possess in order to craft yourself and fine tune yourself against the spirit of the Lord. It's not supposed to be a situation like that, like a marriage. When a man and a woman gets married in America, a woman can look at a man and say, "You need to be on my page," right? That's America. That's not biblical, because the man it's like this cognitive dissonance of being like, "I'm the leader, but I want you to lead." It's like you got to be a follower for somebody to lead you. This is not equal partnership and authority. None of that stuff makes any sense. The Most High chose the man for a particular reason, chose the woman for a particular reason, and there's those two work together. So kind of what we was talking about last week about how this system can be different, but it works. It flows correctly. This is kind of the design. So the Most High set men up to lead, right? A man needs to know and understand himself. Same with the woman. They need to know and understand themselves in order to survive in this place, right? Let's go to Proverbs 30. Proverbs 30 in verse 11. It says, there is a generation that curseth their father, and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. Right? Christ said in Matthew 24 that as the time goes on, people are going to get more cold, and the world's going to start getting a lot harder. Not, difficult, but hard in the sense that the absence of compassion, the absence of the idea of nurturing, the absence of viewing value in valuable things is going to look almost obsolete because people start to turn cold and cold and cold. A person needs to understand who they are, because you understanding who you are, wherever you are, is not supposed to change. Once you kind of nail down, I'm supposed to possess this spirit all the time, and it's not supposed to be I'm not supposed to be malleable when it comes to the law, righteous things, the things the Most High told me to understand and how to comprehend them, how to apply them in whatever place I'm in. It's not supposed to change. You go from, I don't care if it's one country to another, the laws of the Most High stay the same. They're consistent, right? The Most High does not change, so we're not consumed. You'd be confused all over the place if the creators of all heaven and earth kept switching up and down. This is a Sabbath, this is not the Sabbath. Yeah, you can eat pork every now and then, but now I'm not in the mood for you to eat pork now, so I'll judge you for it. That's not how the Most High operates. The law is consistent. If the law is consistent, and that's the thing that kind of binds everything together, and we are children of the light, we need to be consistent. The problem is that people don't really know who they are until pressure's applied. When the fire starts to get hot, you kind of start to see the real person come out. And that's the difference of us not understanding. Well, a lot of us have never experienced a level of pressure that looks like it's on the horizon now. And no matter what kind of chaos happens and is underway, you still need to remain that same individual. The brilliance of it is that the Lord tends to show up when things are bad, because ironically, people tend to reach out to the Most High when things are bad. Like Deuteronomy 8 talks about, Israel's given a warning when you go into the land. Don't forget me because you have things to the full. Don't start to attribute these things to your own prideful nature and being like, well, I got this on my own. You know, people will be like, I graduated from college. They'll be like, oh, I did this, I did that. Hey, shalom, Nate. Most High in Christ bless, bro. They'll say, I did this and I did that. And the pride's high, right? And it's not supposed to be equipped for man. It doesn't really make sense for a person that can get a cold and die from a car accident or whatever, or cripple you, for a person to have a level of pride that seems to be on the same, put themselves equal with the Most High. And the Most High can do all kinds of different things, but this is man on the earth. This is his thought process. I do this, I do that, I succeed on my own, I don't need nobody. God's a fairy tale. I'm the one that makes and breaks my reality, right? There's some truth to that if you understand how the Most High operates, because you can call judgment on yourself. But the idea of being isolated from the person that actually created you doesn't really make any sense. That's why I said people think that they're very intelligent and they're not. When you have these conversations with people, they just, the more they talk, the more they show how inconsistent and the idiocy that they kind of live in on a day to day basis. But as you see these generations in Proverbs 30, as we seem to be in that time frame, right? There's been same thing in the past, but this is what we understand to be the end. These are the generations of the vipers. These are the generations of people that hate their parents. This is the generation of the time of rebellion, right? To not care about the poor and needy. This is where we are. This is the end times. This is the cold cycle that we're going through, right? It's going to get bad before it gets great, right? Or it's going to get worse before it gets better. That has to happen. The same way in John, it talks about the understanding of the birthing of a mother giving a child. She wants the child, that joy that she feels when she receives it is unlike anything else. So I've been told, right? But that pain is something that in the moment, the person would do anything to shut that pain off. But if you cut it off midstream, then you won't receive that blessing from the Lord, because the Lord says the children are a blessing. You have to go through it, right? The key is not to shift, because oftentimes what happens is when a generation gets bad in society and the society starts to lean a certain way, people start to lean with it, right? Because there's plenty of ways to be, there's 1,000 routes you can take to be evil. There's only one road to righteousness. It's only one. Your flesh has this predilection to lean in this direction, to lean in that direction, to do this bad thing, to fulfill itself, which is never fulfilling. It's like a vampire trying to fill up on blood. It never happens. You want it so bad, you try to satiate yourself with it. It's an extremely brief moment, and then you continue on the same path of doing the same destruction. And these are the generations that we're witnessing as people consistently starting to turn cold, and people are doing these different things and with no, like a malice of forethought, doing all these different things with no regard to their neighbor, their brother, the way people speak, the way that they operate. And this is what tends to happen when society and a collective number of people that are wicked rise, right? Things start to happen, it starts to flow in that direction. You have to be able to figure out how to stay grounded and not shift with the culture. People say it all the time. The Bible's old. We need to figure out how to update the dietary laws. Nothing old. The shrimp ain't new. The pig's not new. This is all old. It's been unclean back then. It's unclean now. Christ ain't come on the scene to destroy none of that stuff. Proverbs 28 and 28. I'm gonna start at 26. It says, he that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. Right? The wisdom that the Most High gives you, not the wisdom of this world, is foolishness, as the scriptures talk about. Verse 27, he that giveth unto the poor shall not lack, but he that hideth his eyes shall have many a curse. Because the understanding of everything is sacrifice. From the physical, literally doing sacrifices to the Israelites, to the spiritual meaning behind it, to the everyday speak people say, I got to sacrifice my time to achieve this goal. It flows through everything. That's the theme, sacrifice, right? Laying your life down for your brethren is the highest love that you can show, and Christ showed that. That's the thought process. That spirit is gone from the earth. It's only in a, I don't know if it was necessarily ever here, like on Christ level, but people apply that. It's not special to apply that to only the ones that you care about in your immediate vicinity. Being able to overcome that and attribute that level of compassion to others, we're talking about in your nation, is a whole different feat, because that's what Christ undertook, right? Verse 28, when the wicked rise, men hide themselves, but when they perish, the righteous increase, right? We're focused on the former of the verse. When the wicked rise, men tend to hide themselves. And you see this, think about the operations and how this works, right? When America in 1776, right, as we officially become America, it looks different than it does now, right? It takes time for somebody to land on a place. The spirit's still the same, right? Um, it's just kind of more hidden, right? But they still have these things behind the scenes. But it takes a while for things to shift. These kingdoms have this same cycle, right? The scriptures even talk about in Sirach about how the kingdoms change from hand to hand based off the seed and essentially being absent of God's law. It's no coincidence that when the kingdom of heaven comes, the way that it's never, the scriptures say that the kingdom's never going to go away, right? When it comes, that is the prophecy. But understanding the logistics of a kingdom and how to keep it working and flowing correctly is to apply God's law. To not sleep with a man's wife, to not steal from somebody, to have compassion on the next person. That would make sense because the kingdom would never fall then, right? To have adequate judgment if somebody stepped outside the bounds, you would never really relinquish the power of a kingdom. It wouldn't even make any sense, even though it's prophetic. But as we try to think about this and make sense of it on a human level, there's no way a kingdom can fall like that. If you're applying all these laws to it, it's impossible. It will just consistently flow. So it's no coincidence that the fabric of consistency and having things flow a certain way, God has to be in the midst of it. It just makes sense, right? Like they talk about in Acts when it says, if the Most High is not for it, it's going to crumble. Nothing you can really do about it. That's kind of how it works, attributing to the biblical and on human level, right? But when the wicked tend to rise, people hide themselves, right? Let's go to here's an example of this, right? Go to John. This is why I'm talking about the operations of how this works. Because this tends to happen. And that's why I said before, as a person in Proverbs, when we're talking about a person that looking in the water and you can see yourself, you have got to know who you are. You're going to be able to be tested on what you believe, right? And then you got to pass the test. It's no different than Peter denying Christ 3 times. Peter said, I die for you, right? And I'm sure he believed it. It's the same thing with many of us, Israelites in the truth. I'm sure you believe what you say. But the pressure is going to test it. And you need to be prepared when the pressure does come to stand on who you believe that you think that you are, right? That mind has got to be lined up with the mind of the Lord because that's the one controlling you. That's your creator. Don't depart from it. We have many examples of Israelites willing to die for this truth. John 7 in verse 10. This is when Christ, many other things where Christ shows up for feast days, right? But Christ didn't keep no feast days. Christ didn't care about feast days. The feast days done away with. Christ showed up for him as well because they're commandments, right? And Christ did no sin. So John 7 and 10 says, but when his brethren were gone up, then went he also up to the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, where is he? There was much murmuring among the people concerning him. Remember, Christ is, back in John 2, 5 chapters back, you have the first miracle, right? Of turning water to wine. Christ's reputation preceded him. You can't really contain this level of, this type of spirit can't necessarily be blown out like a candle. You can't just cut it off. This light is going to permeate everywhere. From the good deeds he's doing, to his disposition, to his ability to be able to navigate through whatever questions thrown his way, never lose these open battles of trying to embarrass him, and sticking directly to scripture, but never contradicting, never overstepping, speaking with a seasoned with salt tongue. You can't really hide something like that. It's going to permeate. So these people start to have these conversations about him because people are saying, this is the guy that Moses wrote about. Now, people I'm sure are going to have in their mind thinking about prophetically, maybe. And as he continues to go, and it's just like, I can't really deny this thing, the evidence becomes overwhelming. So now conversations are starting to be had amongst people, right? Verse 12, there was much murmuring among the people concerning him, for some said he is a good man, others said nay, but he deceiveth the people. But if you were to put that to the test, nobody could prove that, because he didn't do anything that somebody's saying he was being deceptive. Verse 13. Howbeit no man spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews, right? Because prominently, if you had like people to the Sanhedrin, you had Pharisees, Sadducees, they command a level of, be it good or bad. In those seats, they command a level of respect. People have a hard time, I've seen it, just being in the truth. People have this weird time calling out. Even though they respect them and they're great friends, it can happen in camps and congregations. People, at least from what I've seen, people have a tendency to be hesitant to call out elders or people in leadership. They won't call, some might, they won't call out as quick as they would the person sitting next to them. You see this happen often, right? That's not a good thing because people are playing favorites and you're not supposed to judge like that. You can't be a righteous judge like that. But people do it, right? And this is, again, trying to figure out, understand who you are. And I said this a lot. The Most High is not trying to figure you out. You're trying to figure who you are. Most High already knows. So you might think that you're an individual that has nothing but valor and respect, and I'm a great person. Time will tell. Pressure and situations will tell. So you're discovering who you are. That's why the counsel of a man's mind is deep. There's a lot of things that run through everybody's mind on a day-to-day basis, right? You might have some crazy thoughts and then think, am I really that person? You'd be like, no, you got to kind of reel yourself back in. But your mind will go all over the place. You need to understand who you are, and that does come through situations, conflict, right? To figure out what side you're going to take, because that's what life gives you. All kinds of situations on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. And you have to figure out over the time, or the course of time, I'm consistent. I'm in this. I'm really in this. But there's always going to be pressure comes that you're not familiar with. And we're going to have to see if you're going to be able to pass this hurdle as well. So Christ is walking, and people are now having to pick sides. Whether it be openly or in their mind, they're going to have to battle it. Because somebody's going to have to say, Christ said, if you don't acknowledge me openly, I'm not going to talk to the Father about your name. You have to be a person that takes that position against all odds. And you'll see people failing at this when Christ is on the scene, because things get hot, things get heavy, and people have to choose man's glory or the Lord's glory, right? Let's jump down to verse 45. Then came the officers to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said unto them, why have ye not brought him? Talking about Christ. The officers answered, never man spake like this man. That is an open, it's a weird thing to be like you kind of hang yourself. You don't want to, but this tends to happen. When the Most High tells you you're supposed to go teach, the more you teach, the more articulate you become. The greater it is, but the more you can hang yourself if you try to claim ignorance, right? I'm not saying everybody's perfect, but it does start to weigh different, and consequences can become heavy when you deviate from what you already know, right? There can be correction and stuff over time, that's different. But a person admitting this out loud, he might not be fully sure, but this is starting to be an acknowledgement, even in the Pharisees in their face. They didn't say that directly, but the implications, not even really implication, it's really there. Y'all don't talk like him. Y'all don't move like him, right? That not making the Pharisees feel pretty well. No man spake like him. Verse 47, then answered them the Pharisees, are you also deceived? Have any of the rulers or the Pharisees believed on him? As if that validation needs to come from them and then flow down, right? It would make sense if they had a pure heart, but that wasn't the case. Verse 49, but this people who knoweth not the law are cursed. These people in these prominent positions talk like this a lot. Be it other nations or be it Israelites. They say these things a lot. If you don't follow my way, something's wrong with you. If you're not in support of this, you're in treason. All these weird little things that people say just to justify the wicked nature of them or the wicked heart that they have that's being revealed, right? So, what's that? Proverbs, I forgot. Proverbs, uh, Proverbs 29:26. It says, "Many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment cometh from the Lord." People do this a lot, right? Because they deem a position that a person holds or a title more valuable than the truth. It's just pride at the end of the day from men. But people do that. They tend to seek who's in charge because they think about the clout, even if it's an evil thing, right? The generation's turning colder and colder, but as the wicked rise, the men hide, right? So you can have not all of them, but even on the surface, it's just like tongue in cheek speaking. Righteous people don't seem to be in prominent positions, so they seem to hide themselves, not necessarily running away. But this is the operation of what happens when generations get worse, because there are evil people in higher positions. There seem to be more. There probably is more of them. Um, but certain people start to become revealed, and they thought that they might have been on one side, and they want to switch. Right? You've seen the Israelites. Southern Kingdom was doing this a lot in the Greek captivity. They want to see what the Greeks are doing, and they shift over, and they want to become Greeks, and they start to look at their own laws as like an embarrassment to themselves, right? Um, John 12. This is another weird thing too. As in John 7, the Pharisees said, like it was an issue, we haven't agreed with them. Anybody that agrees is cursed in the law, and this is a problem, right? Because even amongst the leadership in John 12, John 12:42, you had Pharisees that did believe, right? You had a Nicodemus come, you have Paul eventually, right? But even in the time when Christ is walking on the earth, you have a Nicodemus in John 3 that comes to Christ, right? I understand that people have to be hesitant. They have to understand what they're witnessing and what they do understand as far as like, is this really this? There is opposition here. I have to be careful in what I'm understanding and how I approach it. That's fine. But when you understand that Christ is Christ, don't deny it because of men. It's a wrong position to take. John 12:42 says, "Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him," right? So there were people in those positions that believed, but there was a problem. But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. So you had situations where people believed on him, even in those prominent positions, but they ain't say anything. Be it money, be it influence, be it worry about losing their seat, being one to be in favor to the Romans. All kinds of wickedness happens when the wicked rise up. And this is just the mechanics of how things transpire. How 1,000 wicked people turn into 10,000. Because certain people don't want to say anything, which is even wicked. You have certain people that just desire to go that way. And then certain people that are just being like, I'm going to stay righteous no matter what. But that tends to be few and far between. But this is the reason why it's repeated all the time. This world is made for many, and the world to come for few. It's just kind of the flow of how this thing is going to turn out when the kingdom comes, right? Because again, there's a million ways to be wicked, and there's one path to righteousness, right? Broad is the way to destruction. That is how it works. Um, let's go to Ezekiel 16. Ezekiel 16. I told you we're not gonna be that long tonight. Ezekiel 16 and 44. It says, "Behold, every one that useth proverbs shall use this proverb against thee, saying, As is the mother, so is her daughter." Verse 45. "Thou art thy mother's daughter, that loatheth her husband and her children. And thou art the sister of thy sisters, which loathe their husbands and their children. Your mother was an Hittite, and your father was an Amorite." Now, in verse, I'm going to jump back. Ezekiel 1. Excuse me. Ezekiel 16 and 1. It says, "Again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations, and say, Thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, Thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother was an Hittite." Now, when you look at Genesis 10, right? Genesis 10 lets you know that the Hittites and the Amorites are children of Canaan, right? So when Ezekiel 16 starts off, when it gives you this understanding about Israel being destitute and needing of help, as if a baby like needs swaddling, right, or taken care of, the Lord gives this illustration of how he steps in and takes care of Israel and nurses them and brings them to like prominence. Israel got high off their own prominence and started becoming prideful, and then the Most High has to judge them as the judgment's coming because of that pride. They start to, again, the mindset of being, I'm this, I'm that, without the Lord. It's kind of the mindset of a lot of Israelites in the past. The mother is talking about Canaan, right? Because when you look at the Canaanite tribes, is them being in the land of Canaan. All the practices that they did, Israel adopted, right? They were supposed to go in and clear everybody out and start over with their own law, their own way of living. But Israel tends to do the same thing again, where they see something and they want to keep on and hold on to the practices, be it idol worship, be it killing, be it stealing from their brother or sister, charging usury, child sacrifice, whatever it was, Israel adopted it, right? So when it gives the proverb about using against them, as is the mother, so is the daughter, the mother will be Canaan, right? And this is the children that come from it. It will be just like the children, the mothers act in a certain way, so are the children, right? The same thing in Sirach 10 about the judges and the people of the city, the same way. Officers, same thing. They all have this consistent flow to them. Verse 46, "And thine elder sister is Samaria," right? Because it goes into both of them, as you have northern and southern kingdom, right? But Jerusalem is kind of the main topic, but it still explains both sides of it. So verse 46 says, "And thine elder sister Samaria," which we know is the capital essentially of northern kingdom, "she and her daughters that dwell at thy left hand, and thy younger sister that dwelleth at thy right hand, is Sodom and her daughters," right? So when you look at Jerusalem, the northern kingdom is up above, north, and then you have where Sodom was, or Sodom and Gomorrah was, to the south of Jerusalem, right? So the comparison, juxtaposing Jerusalem against these two sisters, if you will, Samaria and Sodom, right? Using those to mirror the behaviors of the southern kingdom. Verse 47, "Yet hast thou not walked after their ways, nor done after their abominations, but as if that were something like little. The things that they was doing in Sodom and the things they was doing in Samaria, high level wicked. The northern kingdom got cut off. It was that bad. But the Lord is forwarding that the southern kingdom is doing even worse, right? But as if that were a very little thing, thou was corrupted more than they in all thy ways. As I live, saith the Lord God, Sodom thy sister has not done, she nor her daughters, as thou hast done, thou and thy daughters. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And this is the same thing we were just talking about in Proverbs 30. This generation, sharp teeth, no respect for authority, all out rebellion, more cold, and more cold, could care less about the poor, the needy, the people that need help or saving, right? This is kind of the crux of all Israel. People would care less about us. But Jerusalem was practicing this behavior. These were the sins of Sodom. Mind you, in Revelation 11, when it talks about this spiritual Egypt, and this is spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah, right? When you read like in Isaiah 1, it compares Israel a lot to Sodom and Gomorrah. These things that Sodom was doing, and it kind of gives you a peek into Genesis 17 or Genesis 18. It gives you a peek into Sodom and the things that was happening down there. That pride, the same, again, every kingdom falls the same way. That pride, that idleness, right? Let me come right back to Ezekiel. Let's go to Sirach 30. Sirach 30. Sirach 33. In verse 24. It says, fodder, a wand, and burdens are for the ass. Bread, correction, and work are for a servant. If thou set thy servant to labor, thou shalt find rest. But if thou let him go idleness, he shall seek liberty, right? Depending on the context of how you witnessing it, you can kind of put this against Exodus 5 when the Pharaoh was trying to keep Israel on their burdens to make sure they don't think about leaving anywhere, right? That's kind of a bad situation. This situation is different. We're supposed to abide in the work of the Lord all the time, because an idle mind doing these different things is not necessarily good, right? So, yeah. So, verse 26 says, and yoke and a collar do bow the neck, so are tortures and torments for an evil servant. Verse 27, send him to labor that he be not idle. Idleness teaches much evil, right? So let's go back to Ezekiel. This place that we exist in now in America has become the habitation of devils, and is the spirit caged up. Every evil spirit is here, right? So like certain European nations have this extension of this same spirit as well. But this is the hub, right? As they mentioned, forget the city in Revelation about this is Satan's seat. This is kind of the same thing. Whole abomination here. And again, when wicked rises, men tend to hide themselves, right? As Israel, you have people like isolated incidents. I'm sure you had others, right? But the ones that we see highlighted, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, these are a few individuals that have their own corresponding books that are talking against massive people in Israel that's collectively doing wickedness, right? It's very rare or very few and far between. The righteous rarely, dare I say, never outweigh the wicked in number. It never happens really, unless all are righteous. But when you see these prophets emerge and they start getting the word or the burden and they start speaking these things, it's to an audience of wicked people, right? Elijah did it against, I don't know how many prophets it was, or false prophets, 200 or something. You see this unequal balance, righteous to wicked all the time. And this is kind of how it just plays out. And as that culture shifts and gets worse, people get worse, right? All praise to the Most High, the people that do understand and is in this generation that have not drank the Kool-Aid and their spirit are not adjusting to the wickedness, because you're supposed to hear the Lord's voice. You are in this process of trying to crystallize who you are, right? You're trying to understand the heart of you, the heart of man. It's supposed to be righteous. You're supposed to understand everything about yourself and consistently be on that square to defend your position, you with the Lord, and that's it. You shouldn't have culture shifting and you changing. You shouldn't have people in prominent positions telling you and you change because you feel some fear of man. It ain't supposed to be like that. It's you against you. You in this battle, right? So you think about the place that we're in. And Sodom got that bad where, remember, Abraham was like, if it were 50, could you say 50 and not destroy the city? Then he went to 40, then to 30, then to 10. That's how bad it got. And this is how bad it is here. It's just that people have a couple luxuries here and there and they want to turn a blind eye to things. They know what's happening, right? You imagine like a person in this place that we're in, a person become you can be a felon and be the president. You can steal. You can lie. You can kill. You can do the most egregious of crimes and avoid jail time if you got a good lawyer, right? You can change the name of what is in the mother's womb to make it not human and execute the child in this place lawfully. You can worship Satan. You can worship a tree. A woman can divorce her husband and then make the courts pay her. You can redefine marriage and have everybody else acknowledge you as a married person when it doesn't make any sense. It's just an abomination. You can't throw marriage on top of the title of gay. You can be trans. You can wake up the first day of the week and be a man, and before the closing of the Sabbath, you can be a woman. That's this place. That's this. That's the culture. That's the shift. You see it in the children. You see it in the parents egging on the children. This is the place that we're at. It makes perfect sense. They're trying to merge humans with machines. There's a video that a brother sent me, and that's what I'm talking about, the extension of these Netherlands, these extension of these European places. There's a video of a white dude putting a camera on and saying, somebody has to come here and help us out. Somebody's got to put a stop to this. We've gone too far, or blow it up. That's what he says. Set fire to this whole place. They've almost broken through, and they're doing some type of operation to take two men's sperm and make their own child so gay people can have their own child. They're doing some little weird DNA thing where they're splicing. It's that bad, right? You can engage in all these things, every single one of them, every one of them, and still be a devout Christian that loves God and God loves you. the time frame in 2026 is insane. The amount of pressure that a brother or sister has to carry the weight of the Most High's word and still stay down as things collapse, as infrastructure is falling apart, and the systems as we know it since you've been young is no longer in existence. Everything is questioned now. Everything's falling apart. The world's going to world war. You still have to prove, because the tests are going to keep coming, right? And fire will figure it out. When you turn the heat up, we'll figure out what type of individual everybody is that they claim they are. We're going to see if the heart of man answers to man. We're going to figure out if you are what you say that you think you are, right? I gave you that example earlier about Peter, as he thought he was. He turned out to be, but in the moment, I'm not Peter. I'm not better than Peter. I'm not saying that, not throwing shade at Peter. This is just the human experience. The struggle to stay righteous in a wicked place is very, very difficult. It's been done. It can be done by you and other people that believe. You just have to make sure that you are putting all the things in place and trusting the Most High with the faith that you have, not knowing what the end of the tunnel looks like, or at least the journey through the tunnel. You have to trust and put faith in the Most High, a faith that you probably have never seen or exercised before, because we're coming to that point. Jeremiah 23. And mind you, Jeremiah 23 is a chapter many of you know about just lying, deceitful devil pastors, right? The people that's supposed to be leading the sheep and supposed to have the compassion to look after those that don't necessarily know how to look after themselves as far as the word goes, right? What does it take to be righteous? What am I supposed to do? And it's an evil cycle. I think it's not Mount, it's Micah 3, I think, where it talks about how the heads are like them putting people in a pot, peeling the skin off of them. That's what it's like to be lost in the world, to go to a place of a sanctuary of God and be even more lost, or they convert you into a double child of hell. It's a sick place, right? Jeremiah 23 speaks about this, and that's why I said earlier about this place that we know of is spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah. They had pride. They had idleness, all this wickedness that's going on. They had an abundance of bread as it's starting to wind down a bit. All these things that you can do is in this place and still call yourself a Christian and be backed up by a pastor telling you, yes, you can be gay in the church. Yes, you can do X, Y, and Z. Yes, I can feed your children ham at the end of the service. Yes, I can close the book and just make up anything for the next 3 hours and then collect your money at the end. They'll reaffirm whatever it is that you feel like you want to believe, and we'll see how sturdy or stern you are on the Most High's word to remain what the Lord says and not what you think or what you want to feel, right? But that's a dangerous position to say something, believe wickedness, and then have somebody come out of there as a person of authority to tell you what you're thinking is not actually wicked. God loves you no matter. You know how many people have said that? I mean, people you run across in your life, God knows my heart. It's ridiculous, right? That's a harsh judgment. It's the same thing Genesis 3 happened with Eve. You're not going to die. You're going to be just like God. And as Eve saw that tree for pleasure, to be wise, she ate of it, right? And then here comes the downfall as Adam follows her. Jeremiah 23 and verse 14 says, I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem an horrible thing. They commit adultery and walk in lies. They strengthen also the hands of evildoers, that none doth return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as Sodom, and the inhabitants thereof as Gomorrah. Therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts concerning the prophets, Behold, I will feed them with wormwood, and make them drink the waters of gall. For from the prophets of Jerusalem is profaneness gone forth into all the land. Mind you, again, it's like the Matthew 23. These are the people that's supposed to sit in these seats to command a level of respect and understanding to navigate you through God's word. They're strengthening your wickedness, right? They're helping you do wickedness. Verse 16, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you. They make you vain. They speak a vision of their own heart, and not out of the mouth of the Lord. They say still unto them that despise me, The Lord hath said, Ye shall have peace. And they say unto every one that walketh after the imagination of his own heart, No evil shall come upon me. Very dangerous position to be in. And you see this, verse 17 is interesting at the very opening of the verse. They say still unto them that despise. They're talking to people that despise the Lord, right? This can be knowingly or unknowingly. Because the people that you don't know are wicked, that their spirit will come out. It tends to happen a lot on the street. You don't know who it by passing by, but then you start speaking the Most High's words. Here come the evil. It just starts to come out of them like a. They just start convulsing. Right? You talk about ham. We talk about something else. You talk about how women shouldn't be dressed like that. You should have respect for, as if these are demeaning things. You're supposed to have respect for yourself. Spirits come out all over the place because they despise God. They might not know they do. Here's that heart of the man coming out. You know exactly what you look like in the mirror. You can identify. You can see it. That's me. You can point it out. You know the blemishes. You know the different things. People don't know their own heart until you're put in the pressure cooker. And then it starts to come out because you only have, once you're confronted with the truth, you have two roads to take. And a person knows the road of the truth, and then they'll word salad you to death to not go down that route, but to justify going down the opposite way and still call themselves a child or a daughter of God and all this other BS, right? Daughters of Sarah. I'm Proverbs 31. You hear this all the time. Men say the exact same stuff. I'm a leader. I go to church. I do this. I only worry about my family. It's madness. But again, it's very hard when the people over them that's supposed to be telling them, you actually, the way that you're living is actually counterproductive. It's going against the word. And they're not saying that. They're saying everything that you do is justified, right? They want to hold on to a piece of it. It's like the same thing you'll see, like it's two concepts, right? This fascinating thing where, like these Edomites, there's these famous words nowadays called Christian nationalists, right? And they're like alt-right wicked demons, most of them. They don't understand it, but most people don't. They say that they swear by it though. Pastors, white pastors, talking about black people ain't ever done anything good and all sorts of stuff. It's supposed to be all biblical. The funny thing is Christian nationalists is their thought process is America first, and they want to put Christian principles first, right? Then it's funny because if you were to take that same application, that definition, and apply it, actually having a conversation with them to the Bible and be like, the Most High is a nationalist as well, right? He holds one nation above everybody else, as you do America. That's the Israelites. And then they'll be like, oh no, that's racist. No, it's not. It's not racist. It's actually the exact same thing you call yourself. Most High is a nationalist. He prefers one nation over the other, right? The same way Americans, white Americans, not Americans, they don't look at you the same. White Americans will say, if China invaded, we're with America. Yeah, because you hold that nation first. Not really a nation, but that's how they see it. The same principle the Most High does out throughout the Bible. But then when you apply this and you say this and you can articulate it where people can't necessarily oppose a position, that's when they start saying things like, that's evil, that's not Christ, blah, 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 right? Verse 18, for who have stood in the counsel of the Lord and have perceived and heard his word? Who hath marked his word and heard it? Behold, a whirlwind of the Lord is gone forth in fury, even a grievous whirlwind. It shall fall grievously upon the head of the wicked. The anger of the Lord shall not return until he have executed, until he have performed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days you shall consider it perfectly, and it's a blessing to be able to notice it. It's a very dangerous position to be in. Like in Job 9, when it talks about the Most High moving mountains, I'm paraphrasing, and a man not knowing it. It's very weird that you can see everything and the action going on around you and have no way out, no way to understand what's actually happening. You can't really put it together, right? This is the same we was talking about in Proverbs 20, counsel of a man's mind is deep, right? But you have nothing to draw it out. Can't make sense of it. Can't apply it. It's just, it is what it is, and they tend to fall on what's happened in the past. America never lost a war, so we'll just stay here. It looks chaotic now, but the Dow will rebound. The Wall Street will go back up. Wall Street Journal will put out America again, great America. But that's the time and that's the pride that we get, right? Those that get it are starting to consider this thing perfectly. Verse 21, I have not sent these prophets, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. But if they had stood in my counsel, and had caused my people to hear my words, then they should have turned from their evil way and from the evil of their doings. Am I a God at hand, saith the Lord, and not a God afar off? Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, saith the Lord? Do not I fill heaven and earth, saith the Lord? I have heard what the prophets said that prophesy lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. How long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yea, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. And this is what I was talking about. I forgot to mention earlier, the second part of that Christian nationalism thing is there's a piece of America people don't want to let go. They had that nobody's seeing it. Drawing a blank on the state now. The state that they're doing all the redistricting in, hopefully for them come midterms, right? Because they're trying to ice out the black vote. Now, I'm not a person that believes in scriptures tell you, Israel ain't supposed to do that anyway. Believe in voting and doing it. You voting for an oppressor over you. It's just your pick of the litter, right? But those that do even believe it is interesting because they're talking about this is 2.0 and Jim Crow. Is they're isolating these districts to make more consolidated power from the white branch. That's what they're doing from the white side of it. And I don't know what else has to be clear or evident for our people, blacks and Hispanics, to understand that America is not for you and never has been. It's very strange to watch how they want to cleave so much to America and they don't want to let it go. They want to vote. They will die for the right to vote. They'll use excuses about the past and people saying that they voted for this, they love this, our ancestors did this. And there's some portion of they just don't want to let it go. They'll want to have God over here and then still a piece of America over here. Because again, you couldn't, the construct the person, a human mind could create of how to enjoy flesh to the ultimate level would be America. This is the manifestation of that thought. So this would be the place. So I understand living in the fleshly side of it, why you wouldn't want to at least keep parts of America here, because there's certain things that people just don't want to let go. Verse 28, the prophet that hath a dream, let him tell a dream. He that have my word, let him speak my word faithfully. What is the chaff to the wheat, saith the Lord? I mean, it's a massive difference, right? As the Lord of Jeremiah is implying, understand that. You're not supposed to be the chaff, right? You're supposed to be the grain, the thing that's collected and brought into the barn. That's what we're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be carried away with every wind of doctrine or literally chaff in the wind to separate from the seed. There's a significant difference between the two, and it's becoming more and more prominent. But as we get closer and closer to the end, even Israelites in the truth need to reevaluate their position of talking about you're not this because you're not in this congregation, speaking down on the brothers because they aren't in the congregation, or looking at their leadership, like this weird thing about the Pharisees and them, as this is the guy that's second in command. This is the guy that has this authority over everybody else. Y'all come meet everybody here for this. It's just the weirdest thing ever. People need to kind of think about this stuff as the time is kind of dwindling down, because the Most High is doing things where he's forcing Israel into community. It's going to have to be that way. I don't see no other outcome. However, if you were to live and be here when the Lord gets back or not, that's at least what the immediate seems to be heading towards, right? So there's a difference, and the Most High is doing that now, separating wheat from the chaff. Even people in the truth, there's still some chaff out there. I don't want to put that on nobody. I pray it's not me either. But this is the process of what's happening. But let's jump down. Verse 33. And when this people or the prophet or a priest shall ask thee, saying, what is the burden of the Lord? Thou shalt then say unto them, what burden? I will even forsake you, saith the Lord. Right? So people will come and ask those things as they did. They see Samuel coming and people will get jittery because they worry about what the message is, right? Just like Isaiah 13:1 talks about Babylon, the burden of Babylon, right? This is that burden. Right? The word of the Most High comes down, judgment goes out, be it good or bad. Right? People are always on edge. But the Most High sees the situations where He's telling them, I'm not going to talk to y'all no more. It says that in Ezekiel. He sends y'all no more visions and stuff. And then they'll go asking the same thing that happened to Saul, right, in the Old Testament. Help me, be with me. But they want to consistently reject the Most High when He is there. The Lord says, don't worry about what the burden is. Don't worry about the messages. I'm going to forsake you anyway. Verse 34. And as for the prophet and the priest and the people that shall say the burden of the Lord, I will even punish that man in his house, because at the time that's what they're saying. Whatever they're saying, their message is, they're claiming that's from the Lord. And the Lord's already rebuking them throughout the chapter. They're just lying. They're making things up where you're doing wickedness and you're not going to get judged for it. Thus, verse 35, thus shall ye say, everyone to his neighbor and everyone to his brother, what hath the Lord answered? And what hath the Lord spoken? So everybody's going to say, and the burden of the Lord shall ye mention no more. For every man's word shall be his burden. For ye have perverted the words of the living God, of the Lord of hosts our God. Thus shalt thou say to the prophet, what hath the Lord answered thee? And what hath the Lord spoken? But since ye say the burden of the Lord, therefore thus saith the Lord, because ye say this word, the burden of the Lord, and I have sent unto you, saying, ye shall not say the burden of the Lord. Therefore, behold, I, even I, will utterly forget you, and will forsake you in the city that I gave you and your fathers, and cast you out of my presence. And I will bring an everlasting reproach upon you, and a perpetual shame which shall not be forgotten. And this cycle's still going on, right? People are still saying, this is the burden of the Lord. This is the message for the day. The Lord told me that it's a sin to keep commandments. The Lord told me it's not a sin to have sex before marriage. The Lord told me that the shrimp is now clean. You still seeing that now in judgment? Surely, you got a chapter rebuking stuff like this. Surely people that are saying this or putting themselves in that position are going to get judged and cast off, right? And this is the position where you have to understand who you are. I'm going to go back to it. Proverbs, we'll close out. Proverbs 27. Proverbs 27 and 19. As in water, face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. No matter what the circumstance is, or the outside noise, or the evil communications, or the person in the position of leadership, you have to make sure you know who you are and do not sway, like he says, the chaff with the wheat. You cannot be a person because the volume of the wickedness is rising. You cannot want, give into your lust. You cannot shift because things are getting worse. A person, like Paul says in 2 Timothy, in order to achieve, a person must strive lawfully. You have to do these things in the framework of how the Most High designed it. Because remember, the framework and everything that you're seeing, even though things look bleak and look bad, they do. The Most High is the one orchestrating everything. I was saying to my brother and my mom yesterday, even though people might be hesitant in these times, because we're unsure, like you just don't know, right? How things are going to transpire. But the worst thing you can be right now, think about this. Absolute worst thing you can be right now is an Edomite. Think about that. Their time's winding down, judgment's coming. Not just for them, but for everybody. So even though things look bleak, make sure you know who you are. Don't switch. Don't do weird things. Pray to the Most High. Repent of sins. Try to line yourself up the best way you can. And Most High will take care of the rest. Sorry to cut it short, but I'm glad I was at least able to get on. Happy Sabbath, y'all. I pray that it maybe helps somebody. Hopefully it does. Yeah, Lord's will next week. I pray everybody's safe, and like Samuel said, that don't stop praying for brothers and sisters. As everybody going through something. I'm sure somebody's going through worse than you are. So Shalom, y'all. Most High in Christ bless. Lord's will next week. Happy Sabbath, y'all.